discussion this afternoon about whether or not the library is being reinvented for the 21st century. I'd like to introduce to you my panel. First, John Spears, the Executive Director of the Naperville Public Library. Next to John is Sarah Tansley, who is the Branch Manager of Humboldt Park. Next to Sarah is Norma Lugo-Gulyas, who is the Reference Librarian for the City Colleges of Chicago and has been instrumental in taking that institution from primarily a campus environment, brick and mortar environment, into an online and hybrid environment. So, we're going to get started right now. Mr. Spears, you're up first.
Okay, close this. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I don't have a PowerPoint. I have one. Whoa! Which I just dropped. You all right? Oh yeah, I'm fine. So is this. This is the good thing about technology. It's sturdy now. I want to start off with a caveat. And we talk about the future of libraries and libraries in the 21st century. When you look at the state of Illinois, there's 634 public libraries. And that's a lot. And just to give some perspective on that, we have one library that serves over 1 million people, Chicago Public. We have 38 libraries that serve between 50,000 and 200,000. We have 73 libraries that serve between 25,000 and 50,000. And we have 521 libraries in the state of Illinois that serve less than 5,000 people. So when you talk about the future of libraries, and whether libraries are ready for the 21st century, the reality is when you talk about the future of libraries, you really have to talk about the futures of libraries, because libraries are going to get there at a different time. When you have a library that serves less than 5,000 people, they're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that we talk about today, or that you would like to see them do, because they don't have the resources to do it. Now, I want to start out by talking about funding. Funding really is the background for everything, whether it's technology, library services, or anything having to do with public libraries. And you've seen some drastic changes in the past couple of years. Some of the showcase libraries that people used to really point to as, wow, look at what they're doing, libraries like Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Dallas Public, and even mighty Multnomah County have seen some pretty massive cuts. And that's had an effect on how technology is used and what they're able to do. Just to give an example, the funding at Dallas Public was cut from 32 million to 16 million over the course of 5 years. Now that's made them drastically re-examine everything that they do. In Illinois, the funding for public libraries is property taxes for the most part. Over 90% of the revenue for most public libraries comes from property taxes. And libraries had a good time. We had some great times. From 1995 to 2005. Wow, it was wonderful. Those good times are kind of over. A lot of communities have reached build out. You're having a decline in EAV. Just to give an example from my own library, the Naperville Public Library had its levy cut by $2.25 million. For a library our size, that is huge. And we got back $673,000 of that this year for heading into fiscal year 13. But in fiscal year 14, we're going to need another $700,000 just to stay even, because we have been using our reserve fund. That's tapped. That's over. And so funding and what's happening to libraries needs to be kind of behind all of these discussions in terms of what's possible. Also on the funding front, it's not just at the local level, it's also at the state level. When you look at things like capital grant and the regional support, the support for regional library systems, that is also being decimated. The state library is no longer able to give some of the funds that they used to do, and in order to do it, they're kind of robbing Peters to pay Paul. The Illinois State Library gets quite a bit of money from IMLS, and that used to be reissued to public libraries and other libraries in the form of competitive grants. Well, what the state libraries had to do is take that money to support the regional library systems and be able to give all of the other libraries capital grants. So some of the innovation that you're able to see in libraries on the technological and other fronts is no longer really, they're not able to do it because the funding stream has dried up. The IMLS block grants that used to go into LSTA grants to libraries are no longer available. What this means for us is that we really need to prove our worth to our funders like never before. Just to give one example, at Naperville Public Library, one of the first things that I did when I got there was went on all of our databases, created a list of all of the journals that are of interest to the city, anything having to do with public management, fire protection, police protection, HR, purchasing, presented a list of those to the city departments and told them, hey, you can save $23,000 if you cancel all your subscriptions to just use the library databases. They love that. And next year, if they argue with me about funding, I'll just say, well, okay, now we'll cut our budget, we'll have to cut those databases. Sorry, you guys are really busy. And that can be a good thing. So I agree that we need to get the children out there, we need to get support, we need to really get the people to motivate behind the library. But another thing that you need to do is actually be of use to the city. Don't just be this thing over here that's doing story times for kids and teaching people how to use Microsoft Excel. Make yourself indispensable to the actual work of the people that are making the decisions on whether you get your funding or not. And then the other thing that I'm going to say, which is my first heretical comment of several you'll hear, corporate sponsorship is a good thing. Let it happen. If I have a business that wants to give me $60,000 to name a meeting room after them or a computer lab, I'm going to take it. Because that's money that we need to operate. Okay, I thought it was okay when I dropped it.
Oh no.
No, it's good, it's back. So some general observations on what we need to do heading into the 21st century if we really are going to change. And I would love to have just gotten up here and when, with the question of our libraries changing in the 21st century, said yes and sat down. But you probably want more from me than that. So what must we do if we really are going to change in the 21st century? And the first thing is we've got to examine everything, re-examine everything. There are no sacred cows. Nothing can be immune from proving its worth. We have to decide what is absolutely critical and what is no longer necessary. When you're doing this, and I've told my staff this, there are two things that I do not want to hear. The first is just an easy one. We've always done it this way, we can't change. Well, sorry, you have to. The other one is, I think, something we hear from every library professional, and it needs to stop, and that is, we tried that in 1973, and it didn't work. Well, things have changed since 1973, and what I tell them is that's the year I was born. So obviously the library's changed. That's no longer an answer. Just because you tried something before doesn't mean that you can't try it again. Everything has changed. That means that just because it didn't work before, hopefully it'll work now. Another thing that librarians do as a profession is, my God, do we plan things to death? Let's examine everything that can possibly go wrong, plan for it, because we want to make sure this works. Okay, by the time you come out of this 3 years later, whatever you're wanting to do, you don't need to do anymore. We have to adopt a ready, shoot, aim policy. We're going to make mistakes. It's okay, especially on the technology front. I probably been one of those librarians that would have bought a bunch of 12-inch video discs and said, Betamax really is a better format, let's go that way. It would have been a mistake, but given the knowledge that we had, it might not have been a bad decision at the time. And then here's my second heretical comment. We bend over backwards to try to get people into the library that don't use us. Ignore them. We've tried. They're not going to come in. Concentrate on the people that are coming into the library, because we're social creatures. If we can get them into the library and prove our worth to them, and this was kind of touched on in the presentation I was just at in this room, they'll tell their friends. They will come in. I'm not saying write them off, they're dead to you, but we can't spend 50% of our efforts trying to get 100 people in and ignore the 100,000 that are using us. When it comes to technology and other things, one of the things we need to realize is it's no longer about the stuff we collect. Libraries have been about stuff. We're warehouses. That's what we have been. We need to get away from that. And when I say stuff, this is going to come up later, I mean the physical stuff. The books, the CDs, and the movies. We're about services, access, and being a third space. And we're about the experience. We're not a place of retention anymore. If we're going to really survive, and this is where the technology part comes in, I'm going to get there, we need to be a place of creation, not just retention. The silos need to disappear. The structures that libraries have right now and what many libraries have, you have reference, you have circulation, you have children's services. Depending on the size of your library, you might have a couple more departments, you might have a couple less. Those are silos, or as I try to tell my staff, cylinders of excellence that need to be just demolished. Libraries need to become places where whoever you run into can help you. We need to get rid of those behemoth desks. Blasting the reference desk is something that librarians have been talking about for years, but there's only a couple libraries that have done it. The best description I ever heard of the reference desk is they are altars to librarianship, where patrons are forced to pay penance for their ignorance. And that really is what they are. It's a barrier. We need to get staff out there. We need to get into the stacks. Don't get me started on whether we need stacks. That's another hour conversation. So what this all means is we really need to follow a model that is an excellent model, and the only thing that upsets me about it is that libraries didn't come up with it first. And that's the Apple Store. We need to be like an Apple Store, where you define your experience, where there's different levels of service. Is that 2 minutes left? Oh my. Okay, be like the Apple Store. We need to move beyond general reference research and provide in-depth project-based assistance. In the same atmosphere, people's expectations are changing. People want things now. They want individual, customizable experiences and tools. They want it easy. They want library tools that feel like Google and Amazon. They don't want drop-down menus where you have to go through 8 hoops to try to find the book. They want to be able to put in a couple keywords and have it pop right up. They want to be self-reliant, but at the same time they want options. They want to be able to interface with a person if they want to. Fast here. So all things really come back to one thing through all of this, and that's IT is everywhere. Not just technology, but information technology. And we need to set ourselves apart. I mean, when we look at things like this is my PowerPoint presentation on my phone. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have been possible. So technology has changed. It's changed what people expect. It's changed how people learn. Things like the Khan Academy, distance education, those wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago, really, the way they are now. It's also changed how libraries operate, things like collection development, resource sharing, discovery. It's changed the definition of what 24/7 means. 24/7 means you used to have to sit at your computer at home. Well, now 24/7 means you've got your cell phone and you really are 24/7 connected to anything you want to be. So moving into the 21st century, libraries need to adapt to all of these changes. It used to be that if you had a T1 line running into your library, wow, you were cool. I mean, you had all the technology you needed. That's not enough anymore. You now need high-end video and sound editing, Adobe Creative Suite, other software as well, because that's what the patrons expect. And some libraries, such as Skokie and Chicago, have really embraced this. Other libraries are moving in that direction. Libraries like Joliet, that just opened a media center, that has not only all of that, but it also has an actual green screen and poster printer that provides tools that people can't afford or aren't available on their own. Or Fountaindale, which is planning a 28,000 square foot media center in their basement that will offer audio and video production studios. So in partnership with this, what we need is staff that can use all of these tools. Not just provide training on it, but actually work with patients on a one-to-one project-based, work with them on a project-based way, not just providing training. So the stuff that we have isn't just books and CDs anymore, it's the equipment. And we need to relax about the equipment and let it leave the library. So what that means is we're not just going to check out books anymore, we're going to check out laptops, projectors, video and audio equipment, and if your library isn't offering a digital playground, you need to be. I have more, sorry.
Should be right there at the bottom.
this isn't actually a full PowerPoint. I just wanted a couple visual aids to show you what I'm going to talk about today. My name is Sarah Tansley. I'm the branch manager of the Humboldt Park Branch Library at the Chicago Public Library. And I think the angle I went with is building design today because I'm actually no longer at the Humboldt Park branch because we've handed over our building for renovation, and that's a picture of what's going to be happening at our branch. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how technology has fueled this addition. But a little bit of background about Humboldt Park community. It's a socially and economically diverse neighborhood, and this library serves as an education hub, a technology center, and a community center for the neighborhood. Humboldt Park is a smart community, and I serve on the steering committee for the Humboldt Park Smart Communities Initiative. Humboldt Park Branch serves over 134,000 visitors a year. While we're talking about technology, we still actually have an increasing circulation of traditional materials. So we circulate about 85,000 items a year. And we circulate over 65% of our physical items in that time. Actually, monthly, I'm proud of this statistic. We circulate about 30% of our books on the shelf. Or physical items, because there's DVDs as well. So we're embarking on a renovation to our existing building, and this is what it looks like from the sky in the mock-up. But this gives you an idea of what that space is going to look like. It's actually a children's room with a teen space at the end in the circle, and that's a U-Media, which is a model that you can attend another workshop later today and tomorrow, learn more about U-Media, but it's a digital learning space for teens. And for our space, it will be for preteen set, like a middle school age, science-based area. So it's pretty exciting for our neighborhood. We're also getting a bunch of new technology in the children's area and in the existing space, which you can't see the designs of that. To give you an idea of what we do now and what our capabilities will be, we currently have about 2,000 to 3,000 internet sessions a month. I can't really tell you what that means in terms of time, because it could be anything from 5 minutes to an hour on the computer. It could be on a laptop, it could be a child, it could be an adult, but it gives you an idea. These sessions are delivered in a variety of means, but it does not count Wi-Fi, which is our most popular actual delivery method right now, is people coming into the branch. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, when people are coming into the branch and using their own equipment to get on the internet. So with this new space, we're looking at increasing our access, we're looking at increasing the way we deliver technology to our public, and that's all very exciting to us. We're also looking at creating tech-friendly spaces. Our existing building was built in 1995, and if it was like a year later, it would be so much better, but our existing building is very not tech-friendly, so it doesn't have a lot of plugs. It doesn't, you can't answer a cell phone in there because it's so dense. The construction material is so dense, it doesn't receive signals inside. So all that has been a challenge for the branch, and that's part of the reason why we are getting the addition to bring us up to date. So some of the questions that were posed to me today were the future of technology in our branch and how we see it as librarians. And I think some of the trends that I'm seeing that are very interesting, and I hope that we've accomplished with this design, is that there's a lot of people who are skipping medium or platforms. So they're going straight from never using a computer to having a Kindle Fire. They're going straight from never having used a computer to accessing the internet on their phone. And they're not necessarily interested in learning what we're trying to teach, with our traditional computer-based classes. And so we have to be as adaptable as teachers to what the patrons are using our Wi-Fi for, using our technology for. So I think that's something that we should really keep in mind as librarians, because we're very focused on doing one thing, which is delivering the computer technology classes, but we're not necessarily looking at the 13-year-old who's using a PS2 to access the internet. that's just something that, we're not actually taking in, I think, as an access point. So another thing that we are, I think, looking at as 21st century librarians is adaptability. A lot of this space is going to be mobile tables. It's not permanent because we have to be able to build space that's not like my original building, that's permanent and it doesn't work anymore. So a 15-year-old building is obsolete. We can't do that anymore. We have to look at design that can change. And if new media isn't what we're envisioning now, all of that can be removed. All those tables, all that technology can be updated whenever we need to. It's all on wheels, it's great. So that space, besides the mechanicals of the building itself, are totally adaptable. So I think that's a lesson that we've learned the hard way, and I think it's something that you should really take into account if you're thinking of redesigning a space. Also think of a sense of space. Space has changed how people use space, what people are going to be using your space for. So when you're designing a space like this, you have to think about light. You have to think about plugs. You have to think about the way people use space in general. No one likes to sit in their grandma's attic. And that's a lot of times what our libraries look like. They're dusty, and they're dark, and they're weird spaces to hang out in. So that's not just true for teen spaces, that's true for adult spaces as well. You also want to be able to continue delivering the information in a variety of ways. So you can see there's still bookshelves here. Like, we're not just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You can design a space that has both needs, all needs, anticipating needs in the future, doing all different kinds of things. And I can't say enough about the environment that you create. This is going to be the front view of our new addition from the building. You can see the existing building on the far side. Look at those skinny, tiny little windows. Look at the new windows. They're like 7 times the size. To be all windows. That's a south exposure, and it faces Hummel Park, which is a huge park. It's going to change the way our library space feels. The sunshine on you feels good. It's warm and inviting. Yeah. What it's like now is like you're in a castle, and it has tiny little windows, and somebody's going to put an arrow out of it. Yeah. It's very strange. So looking at this design, this is something that can last forever. And the technology is important, but being able to build a space that can be used 15 years from now when we don't even know what the technology is going to be, that's what you kind of have to think about in this process. So that's all that I have about design. I hopefully I can answer some questions you have later.
Thanks.
All right. You can just let it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You can pull it down too.
Yes. Hi, my name is Norma Lugo-Gulyas, and I work at Wilbur Wright College in the Learning Resource Center. And when you go to Wright College, wherever you go, I've always run into people who say at some point or another they've been to Wright College. And Wright College is very unique. The library itself is in a very unique building. It's a pyramid-shaped building. And I've been there 22 years. Actually, yeah, 22 years. And I teach online classes. Now, we have a library technical assistant program, and it's been around since 1975, I want to say, and that's long before I was even in there. But the thought was when it used to be taught traditionally in the classroom. And at one point, about 10 years ago, it was decided that it should completely go online. And so they hired someone to transfer those classes that we have to an online process. Well, I fought it for 2 years. I didn't want to teach online. I was used to the classroom, and of course, like any other instructor who doesn't want to move that way, you just crawl along. Well, I had to learn. And so I've been doing this for 10 years, and it is exciting. It's a new way. This is the way students are learning today. They are learning either in the hybrid form, which is part classroom or part in online, or completely online, as we are. And we have 4 courses that we teach online, and they are, that will serve towards getting a student a basic certificate. And then they can actually work in a library as an assistant to a librarian. They are not the librarian, let me just state that, because that's a question that I get quite often. The reason why we went online was to make it convenient for students. Also, with time constraints, with students having such a busy schedule, they don't have time for anything else. And in fact, I have students who tell me constantly, I have a life. And so, with that, I get the point, but you have to include, if you're going to go to school, you have to include the online process as well. Remember that we're here still. And it's so easy once you turn off your computer to forget that you don't have classes to take. And what we do is we communicate with students. I send them emails, actually, to their personal emails, so that when their little phone bings at work, they know that they've gotten a message either from me or from whoever it is in their family. But at the same time, I'm able to do that. I'm able to email them and let them know that something important is occurring in the class. Also, we decided to go online mainly for the purpose of reaching more students. We're able to actually reach students further than just Illinois. I recently had a student who started in my program and decided that she needed to move to Georgia, and could she finish her courses there? And of course, she was able to do that. She had to pay the out-of-district fees, of course, but it was doable. And so it makes it easier for students to actually do this any hour of the day or night, so that they have an assignment to complete within a week. But as long as they complete it within a week, they can access these courses online 24/7 and actually do the assignments. And now, through these courses, we actually teach them about technology. And so, if they need the hands-on, and what I find is that a lot of my students already know what an e-book is, or they know what scanners are. They've encountered them in their lives at some point, or Xerox machines, for example. But they still need to know through the courses how to use them in libraries, and that's what I try to do. I try to teach them how these things function in libraries. And we also provide a practicum, or what you would call an internship. That internship it's an optional thing, because we find that a lot of our students already work in libraries. And in fact, some of our students come to us trying to make a change in their career. And so they already have master's degrees, or they just want the certificate so that they can work in a library, because they always have these fond memories of what libraries really are. And so about books and reading and the whole warmth that you feel when you walk into the library. And so what we do is we try to train them, but they come to us already having these degrees. So we don't say, oh no, you can't come, you can't get the basic certificate. We encourage it. We encourage them to go on. And so usually what students do, when they take these online courses, they really don't know what to anticipate. And so we do a short seminar. We have them come in, sit down with us, and we walk them through the online process. We use something called Blackboard. And I don't know, does anyone here know what Blackboard is? Okay, a show of hands. That's pretty good. Yes, that's great. That's not always something that everybody knows. And so when students come to us, we sit down with them, we do a seminar, and we teach them how to walk through or maneuver the electronics end of it. And so what they do on these online classes, they have discussions, they critique articles, there are assignments actually. They have papers to write, projects to do, quizzes, tests, everything is completely online. And of course, when I tell students that there are no books involved, they actually look at me and they say, really? They're actually shocked because everything is there. And you know, sometimes some of these courses can actually teach themselves if you set them up properly. So that, not to say that I don't do any teaching when I do put a course together, but it can teach itself occasionally, depending on the type of students that you have. And you know, the students that come to us really have they have challenges, and they don't always tell us right away. We find out little by little as we do discussions in the class. And I actually had a student who I didn't know. I mean, I met him in person, and when you meet people in person, they don't tell you everything. And so it came out in the class that he had a criminal record. And so I wasn't going to even question the fact that he had the criminal record, but other students in the class started to ask questions. And so it was really up to him to answer them if he wanted to. But he just, glossed over a little bit, which was okay. But, students don't always tell you, like any situation, you don't always know what's going on. Sometimes people ask me, well, how do you know if that student is really the student in your class who's taking the exam? Well, you know more or less because you know how, as you go along in the semester, you get to know your students, you get to know how they write, you get to know how they respond to things. And so, of course, you get to know your students pretty well by the end of the semester. And you know whether or not they are the ones writing their papers. Most of our students, of course, have to be disciplined. They have to be able to move on in the class. They have to be able to move the discussion forward and write to me if they have problems. And more than likely, there will be a problem. Most of the problems are I didn't put out the quiz, or I didn't put out the writing assignment, things like that. Anything that's related to technology. But the one thing that I wanted to emphasize in all of this is that I actually, let me just say that when I go out to recruit students for our program, what happens is that most students are not interested at all in libraries, mainly because they still see libraries as being quiet places where they're shushed constantly, or places that are not as inviting as they would like them to be, or they have a reason why they don't think libraries are a way to go as a career. And so my biggest challenge actually is trying to convince them that libraries can be exciting. There is technology there. There are computers, laptops, and we've just recently bought about 6 iPads, and we're using them. We're using them for workshops that we do, small workshops that we do with students. And we have a lot of technology. And my hardest job, though, is getting students to understand that technology is there and that libraries are exciting places to be. And so, we actually serve coffee in our library. So when Thursday, one day a week, Thursdays, and when Thursdays comes around, you will not believe the crowd that comes around the coffee containers. And then they come and they stay. And we find that when they stay, they really enjoy the atmosphere. They stop and talk to us. They see it as a place more than just for learning. They see it as a place, as a social network area too. So libraries can be exciting more than they really know, and that's the really biggest challenge I find every day when I try to recruit students. Is that pretty much okay? Okay, great.
My name is Hilary and I'm a cyber navigator. I make that distinction because
Yeah, microphone.
hello.
Yeah.
I make that distinction because my function in a library is different from that of a reference librarian. When you walk into a library and you need to find certain pieces of information to shape a search, that is the responsibility of a reference librarian. I, on the other hand, could be construed as a guide or a facilitator. Because for the very first time in many instances, people are coming to the library whose focus is not on finding information. I don't know if you are aware, but if you were to go to find a position at Jewel or CVS or primarily any entry-level position, you no longer have the option to speak to the hiring manager. The first stop will be to a computer to put your information in. That is extremely important, and the reason it's extremely important is because all of a sudden people are coming to the library to facilitate something that is not associated with the information in the library. And that is why it's so necessary for me to be there. I need to be able to take that individual, figure out quickly what their apprehensions are, get them online quickly so they can function, so they can take one step further to getting a job. Because that's all they really care about. I mean, it can be a beautiful library, it can have up-to-date technology, whiz-bang toys, all of that. But for a large amount of the population, they are coming to the library because they have to do so in order to facilitate employment, screening, more and more medical information, and these things that where in the past might have been a face-to-face conversation are now a conversation which by definition includes some type of electronic format. So if you ever wonder what in fact a cyber navigator does, like I said, I'm a bridge, all right? And I'm a bridge from those people to those people who need to get things done with the input of an electronic format through the resources available at a library. Thank you. We're going to take questions and answers at this point. Are there questions from the audience that you'd like to address to my panel? Okay. No? All right. I do have a question that I'd like some feedback from each of my panel members. Historically, on a grand scale, the library has been a portal. It's been a portal for those people who come from other lands, be it other cities or other countries. They can always go to the library to get information about how to get ahead. And even now, you can go to the library to get quotes on the exams. They could also go to the library to see what was going on back home through the newspapers that come from different lands. Has the introduction of the technology changed that fundamental piece of it? Let's start.
Yeah, I get to go first again. No, it really hasn't. I mean, even given everything that I said earlier, the one thing that really needs to be emphasized to everyone is that libraries aren't changing what they do. They're just changing how they do it. The tools have changed, so much else has changed, but the role that libraries play, the role that the librarians play, the library staff plays, is still the same. We just have an incredible variety of tools that weren't available. You can go 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and it's just an exponential growth in terms of the amount of tools and information that we have. And we need to find the best ways to keep fulfilling that mission. And that's going to be different depending on how the people use the library. Because there's no one user, there's no one way to do everything. Some people are going to want to come in and talk to a person to get that information. Other people are going to rely on the library catalog, where it used to be if they wanted information, they'd use the OPAC, or going back even further, they'd use the actual card catalog and find a book on what they needed. We need to embrace the changes that are possible with those technologies, because I think all too often one of the things the libraries have done is they just transition one technology to the next without necessarily embracing all of the functionality that that new technology can bring to bear on what the issue is that they're looking at. I'm going to give one example, and that is SOPACs. There are OPACs, online public access catalogs. But what's really coming in now is the SOPAC, the Social Online Public Access Catalog, where it's not just the old OPAC, which is really just take the old information from the card that was in the card catalog and slap it on the screen. This allows a much richer experience for the patron. Things like cloud tagging that allows the patrons to actually input information into your catalog, that allows for that sense of community to develop, where people will put their own reviews of books in. And then finally, what it also is allowing is for a much more dynamic experience. And by that I mean that it's not just catalog records now for the items that are in your collection. With a SOPAC, you can have a catalog record for a program that you're offering. So if someone looks up World War II, and you happen to have a program coming up on World War II, well, you're not just going to get bibliographic records for books on it or CDs or anything else. You're actually going to get a record for the program coming up with a direct link where the patron can register for it. And this could be expanded to everything. If you have a decent catalog and someone comes in and is looking at a book on how to start a business, one of the first things that should pop up is make an appointment with our business librarian. They are there to give assistance. So in a very long answer to your question, no, it really hasn't changed. We just need to make sure that we don't hold ourselves back in technology by using new technology to just do what we already were doing. Take advantage of the full range that the new technology allows and move forward that way.
One of the big advantages I think that I've found in the past year that I've been at Humboldt Park and on the Smart Community Steering Committee for Humboldt Park is that while we as librarians have a habit of trying to do everything for everyone, I've been able to meet all of these folks who are doing these social services through technology at a variety of different levels in my community, and connecting with them and realizing that I can be really good at one thing and they're really good at another thing. We don't all have to do everything. And that connection is really great, and that's facilitated by the technology. So.
Hilarious contact. Colleague Sarah's. I worked in the community. I worked in Austin, which is actually the largest community area. And I worked there for 15 years. There were 120 community organizations. Where I work now, it's near Wright College, and there's some new services, but that kind of thing, the availability of some of these, what Sarah was talking about, there needs to be some, it's not always handy, because the community it's a suburb of the city. It's not, it's more remote. It doesn't have the same kind of resources. It doesn't have many of them. Different population, especially older. I understand the idea of sharing is a great idea. But I find that there are many times I'm in a position where I can't send a person on his way because for various reasons, but I might sit down and spend an hour when I don't really have the time, especially now. And of course, the other staff members have to pick up the slack that which is the reason I think Sarah was mentioned. So, the fewer staff members and adaptability and issues, it's not not spread around, it's not that it should be. I don't disagree with the concept.
Thanks, Bruce. I think too, maybe I can explain a little bit of what this smart communities concept is. It's to bridge the digital divide, and some of you probably are familiar with it, especially those of you from UVI, but it's not just libraries, it's basically anyone providing technology in our community. So it's a wide variety of different types of community organizations, and when you sit around the table, you actually get to share that. So it's a unique program. It's in a handful of Chicago communities, but I know it's not available to everyone, but for us, it's been amazing, and I've just been really lucky to be part of it. And you know, it's definitely something, if you can try to create that. I mean, we meet monthly, and we just learn so much from each other. It's amazing.
At the city colleges, the city colleges has always been a place where large immigrant communities have always gravitated to when they come from foreign countries, and mainly because of the inexpensive education that they can get there. But let me just say, as a community college, even at Wright, if you have anyone who wants to use our computers, they can.
I know that.
Yeah. In
our
our
child information,
Right.
you're not full-fledged child information center to do offer services. And I understand that you do allow people to use computers when it's the development there. You're not in a crowd.
Let me just say, we recently hired 3 new librarians. And before, we weren't able to do a lot of programming. What we were able only to do was a lot of the reference plus at the same time, the orientations as to what's on our campus and databases and all that. Now that we have more people on our staff, we're able to actually provide more services. And if you walk into our building, you'll notice now, most recently, because we have a new chancellor, she's encouraging more computers throughout the whole of the campus. And so when you walk into our centers, if you just walk into the library, not even the library itself, just on the outer perimeter of our entranceway, of our lobbies, you will see more computers there. And you don't even have, once the library is closed, the computers are still on the outside of in the lobby area, so that students or anyone can walk in there and actually use the technology that's there. And there are dedicated printers too. So that when it's open to the public. So we are a community college, and so the community is always welcome.
I have a question that I think Sarah touched on in a little bit. As you're talking about 21st century and doing all of these, doing more in terms of partnering with your communities, etc. One of the questions that I've been thinking about is how to plan for abandoning services that you maybe don't need to be doing as much anymore. So that instead of spreading yourself thinner, you're concentrating on things that are meeting the needs that you see, as Sarah said, not being everything to everyone, everywhere, but perhaps figuring out, okay, I don't need to be this thing, so I can now be a bridge or whatever it may be. And so I just wanted to see your thoughts on planning for those things that you're going to phase out and to do these new things.
Well, the question was directed to you. I'd really like to hear the rest of the panel contribute also.
I think that one of the first things is community assessment is the most important part when adding services or taking away services in your community. So you have to know what's available in your community, and it's just footwork. Being on committees, knowing your community, talking with your neighbors. And Humboldt Park, we have a lot of social service providers in very close proximity to the library. So I don't need to provide a GED class in my library. What I do need to do is partner with the GED class that's 3 blocks away so that we have an easy referral intake process. And then I'm inviting them back to the library to use traditional library services, utilize our technology, and come in for the things that I'm good at. And that's kind of how we do that. Really, for technology reasons, I think that that's one of the reasons why we're looking more at providing less hardware, I think, especially in this edition. We're looking at actually than initially designed having less computers than what we originally planned for. Because we have tons of computer labs in our area, we have a lot of usage, but is our usage, just because you build it does not mean that they're going to come. I mean, there's not necessarily a wait for computers in my library now. Now, will the space be better? Yes. But what I need more than anything is plugs. So I don't need to make this big elaborate thing, I just need to be open for business. Meanwhile, we have some great computer classes that are actually job skills training in our community, and that's what people want. And I can't teach someone how to refurbish a computer. It's not something that we're in the business of doing. So we just have those great connections in the neighborhood.
Well, yes, like I mentioned recently, you hired new librarians, and what we're doing actually is incorporating more workshops that we do, not just for students, but the public is actually welcome to attend them. And so that is our way of kind of connecting with the community that's in our vicinity or whomever wants to come. And most of this information is located on our website at wright.ccc.edu.
We're looking at what services to expand and what services to get rid of or deselect. You're really talking about strategic planning. And strategic planning, as it's been done in libraries very often, was geared towards the library. What does the library need? And everything was done in terms of what can the library do. And strategic planning needs to kind of change a little bit so that it's not focused on the library. Because if you ask people, and I've done this, should we close on Sundays? No. Okay. Should we buy more books? Yes. Should we buy more DVDs? Yes. Should we buy more computers? Yes. It's kind of hard to plan when everything's expanded. And so what we're doing in Naperville is we're kind of changing the way that we do strategic planning to try to answer that question of how do you get rid of some things and expand others. And the library is actually not involved anymore in the first steps of the strategic planning process for the library. The community is. And it doesn't start off with the premise of what is the library doing or what can the library do. It starts off with the premise of what does the community need? Where does the community want to be, if we're looking at 5 years, where does the community want to be in 5 years? Not where will the library take the community in 5 years, but where does the community want to be in 5 years? And then you move it backwards. And then everything that we do is geared towards what services should the library be providing to get the community where it wants to be in 5 years. And if we have a service that isn't going to get it there, that's going to be one of the things that we're going to look at. Is that something we need to be doing? Because we are a public library. We are the community's library. And our goal isn't our own self-preservation. It's the preservation of the community. And the best way that we can be a part of that and a part of the community, which is going to lead to our self-preservation, is to actually be one of the major drivers of getting the community where it needs to be.
Yes.
Sir. Sure. Is there?
Yes, right up at the front. Right at the front.
Wow, I feel like a lounge singer. A couple of spin-off questions on this. As we're talking about this evolution, I've heard called the kitchen to the grocery store to the kitchen. There are lots of different things, and I love the idea of the cyber navigators staff. What have tied up librarians extensively, and a lot of this being given to well-educated, experienced users who are not necessarily research oriented. So I love that In 5 years, I think a lot of us are moving towards that. We're reorienting our services, but we still have the same number of librarians. So let's presume we're going to keep the same number of staff. 5, 6 years from now, will there be a lower number of librarians in that staff and more cyber navigators? Speculate. Are we shifting the number of people doing that? And then sort of an even bigger picture question. Library is, the name of it is tied into the concept of reading content, etc. As we move towards this model, and the strategic planning is, let's look at the community and see what needs to be done. If we see that less and less of what the community needs is what a library is, should we stop calling it a library? Should we start calling it a community resource center? And we have research assistants instead of librarians. I think maybe that's what bogs us down when people argue with us about, the library needs to keep all of its books, or, are we, this is just kind of dawned on me, maybe we're not really libraries anymore. It's kind of weird, and I'm sort of scary to say.
You can call it Stephanie as long as I still get my funding. And this kind of gets back to the question that you posed. It really is the same thing. It's connecting people with what they need in order to enrich their lives. Whether that is literature, whether it's information, whether it's music, whether it's you are part of that web of community. Every library should be a part of what I kind of call the community web, where no matter where you hit it, you're going to get what you need. If you come to the library, but what you really need is a social worker, or a women's shelter, or career counseling, or Alcoholics Anonymous, if you come to us, we should be able to point you where you need to be. We're not going to provide those services, but we can still be the gateway, the gateway to it. And I'm going to blank here. So when you look at, are we still going to call ourselves a library? I think we also do need to look at, are we still going to call ourselves librarians? And it was said earlier today that, you don't want to be necessarily librarians shelving books because they need to be doing the work of librarians. And I actually kind of flip that on its head in the sense that I don't see my staff getting smaller, but my ideal library, everyone would have an MLS. Because I don't necessarily see the jobs differentiating. I actually see them kind of coming together. And this gets back to what I said earlier, where people don't use businesses the same way they used to. People don't expect services to be delivered the same way they used to. And libraries very much kind of still are. When you walk in and you need a piece of information or you need a book, you go to the circulation desk because it's the first thing there. They're not allowed to help you find it, so they send you to the reference desk, which then helps you find it. You might need to grab a shelver to actually find the book if it's in back. Then they send you back to the circulation desk to check the book out. Why? That talk about just a model that has fallen apart. Having everyone anyone you come into should be able to do all those things for you. And technology allows this. You can have your cell phone, and if you've got a credit card swiper, you can look up the book on the catalog, check the book out, and pay a fine. You don't need 3 people to do that anymore. So I think that the future of libraries isn't fewer librarians. To me, and what I hope to see is that it is more librarians.
I think you made a lot of grad students in the room very
I don't think that getting rid of librarians would be the answer to everything. In fact, and this is why I'm in the area of training people to work in libraries. With all the new technology that we have, you have to have someone to teach how to use that technology. And so we're finding that that even when we first bought our 6, or did I say 8 iPads, we used them for a seminar, a small workshop that we were doing. And in doing that, the students, we couldn't even get past how to use the databases because the students were so intrigued at how the iPad was, how you move things on the iPad. They were more intrigued by that than by the databases that we were trying to teach them about. So, there's always new technology, and the thing is that we have to learn it to teach it. And so there will always be a need for librarians to do that.
Just a real quick comment too, as librarians, we like to get really hung up in the mode of delivery. But one of the things that I am reminded every day is that the patron who's coming in for the new James Patterson doesn't care if they get it in print, on their Kindle, they just want it. And we have to give it to them, however it is. So, it's, while we are talking about technology today, we have to remember that not to get too caught up in the mode. It's just, patrons aren't really, the patron just sees the end result, so.
I wanted to respond to this and use an analogy. We have nurse practitioners, we have physician assistants. That does not negate the need for the doctor. There will always be a need for librarians. My work supports every librarian in Seltzer. Now, if the line at the reference desk is down the hall, which it is sometimes on Sunday, yes, I will go up and ask if there are any non-reference questions that I can address in order to contribute my efforts and get the line down. That does not take anything away from my reference librarians, and I don't think that it is anything other than contribute to the overall running of a Sunday that's crazy, okay? So there will always be, I just see it as an extension, okay? Not a takeover, just an extension of what we're able to offer.
Not so much could you be getting rid of it, but does it shift the balance?
I don't think so. I would be in the same boat. I'd want all librarians. In fact, I try to make librarians out of all of my staff. So I'd be in that boat. And for the handful of people who, actually went to library school because I encouraged them for years and years and years and years, I was like, look, you're already doing reference every day. You might as well just become a librarian. So.
Other questions? Yes. Yes.
So, especially with new technology coming in, for example, the poster printer, and to say like 3D printers, which is probably going to be slightly opposed by higher bureaucracy and administration because of potentially negative repercussions from legal issues and infringement and whatnot. How do you go around dealing with being a 21st century librarian, trying to convince the higher-ups to allow technology to flow into the library?
As a higher-up, I don't necessarily think sometimes that the higher-ups are against it. I think resistance can come from any level of staff, and resistance to change is kind of a universal concept. You see resistance from everyone, whether it's technological changes, whether it's staffing changes, whether it's oh, guess what, guys, your break's now 15 minutes instead of 20. And then there's people I know that if you move the break from 15 minutes to 20 minutes, they'd be upset. So I might, actually argue with the premise of the question. A lot of higher-ups are embracing technology pretty quickly. The legal issues, they work themselves out. And I'm not being completely facetious with that. As a library, we see, when you get down to it, we see the law being broken in our libraries every day. And you post that copyright notice on a Xerox machine, that was kind of the initial one, and you walk away. we're not there necessarily to completely monitor how people use the technology. Now, if they're using it for something that is just kind of patently offensive, then yes, then you can step in if it's harming someone else. And I'm not saying go out and allow your patrons to just, run willy-nilly and break all laws. But when someone checks out 30 CDs and returns them all the next day, you've got a pretty good idea what they're doing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's our role to interfere with that. So things like 3D printing and a lot of the other legal issues, it's not turn a blind eye. It's not just allow it to go on. But part of being a library is that you have to trust your patrons. And very often what can happen in libraries is that for those libraries that don't trust their patrons, you start placing restrictions to keep 2 people out of 100,000 from doing something that they shouldn't do, but then keeps the other 99,998 from doing something legitimately. So the technology really, you just got to trust that people are going to use it for the purpose in which it was intended, and realize that, as with anything, there will be people who will use it.
And you had spoken, John had mentioned when he was speaking about librarians' habit of over-planning, and I think that might fall in here as well. We over-plan so much when we're getting ready to implement something. Sometimes we actually plan out unintended consequences that are positive, because we spend so much time trying to control the outcomes that we control positive things right out of. So you can't really plan absolutely for something. You can even have an idea of how it might turn out. You implement it, and something completely unexpected that's absolutely great happens and comes from it, and other ideas are arrive from that as well. So when you overplan and worry too much about what's going to happen, what will be the end result, I think that you can actually do more damage to yourself and waste a ton of time. Don't even get me started on wasting time.
Miss Hilary, when you were speaking up there, I was listening to your voice, and the manner in which you spoke about cyber navigating, you spoke very succinctly and eloquently, so that I know that you have very good rapport with people, it sounds like. So I'm pretty sure you're a good cyber navigator. To that end, I'd also like to say, if you're not already, you would make a very good storyteller. I'm in storytelling class now, so these are important.
We do a lot of that.
Okay. Comment for Sarah, having just recently survived a branch renovation myself, I can say you're definitely in for a wild ride. We managed to stay in and keep our branch open during the entire course of the renovation. So I hope that we weren't really given any opportunity to give input on how the new branch should be, or what things we might need to help in this manner or that manner. It was kind of told and dictated to us how it was going to be. And not all of the considerations were taken as far as ergonomics, space requirements, our ability to do our job in our space. And as a result, we've lost a little bit, but we've gained immensely what we got. It's a beautiful new renovation with double the computers. So I hope that this is a big transition for you. It was mostly for us. You're in for a good ride. I hope you get to enjoy it. John, it sounds like your library, your theoretical library with the technology issues would be a dreamland to work at. And just to wrap my comments up, one of the things that I think helps me now and will continue to help me in the 21st century is I have a pretty strong customer service attitude and ethic. That can depend on the person. For me, it's very important in how I deal with the people, the patrons, and even among coworkers. And so that leads to my final point. A strong teamwork and synergistic component with your coworkers can really make all the difference. As you're transitioning, as we are all transitioning in this new era of technology, books, movies, technology, whatnot, just strong communication skills with our coworkers and even with ourselves, and being able to receive communication. So I think those, to me, are really, really important aspects moving forward, is teamwork, communication, and just being open to change.
And on that note, Brian,
Yes, we just have just a couple minutes, so yeah, we should.
Okay, are there any further questions?
Hi, my name is Lenny from Lugo-Gulyas. First of all, thank you for your great presentations. And well, I think you have something in common. For example, libraries are changing, or at least they are trying to change themselves. But on the other hand, I'm sure that there's something never changes. For example, as John mentioned, funding is a very important part to libraries, and I believe it will never change because funders and investors always want to check the result of their investment. Even angel investors also want to do this. And so this is my question. What kind of evaluation model do you have to measure your organization's ROI, I mean return of investment? And if you have any, is there a change to your evaluation model which based on all these kind of technological development? Thank you.
I promise I'll give a quick answer, which you guys probably don't expect from me. Libraries have been so driven by statistics, widgets, and outputs, and that needs to go. Circulation is not a measure for libraries, not like the community return on investment the library gets. And it's becoming somewhat cliche, but where we're moving, where a lot of libraries are moving, is away from outputs and it's towards outcomes. And if any of you can write a great book on outcome measurement for public libraries and how to do it, you will make a fortune. Every library will buy it. What we need to do is not measure just did the person come through the door, did the person check out the book, did the person attend the computer class. We've started really measuring, doing a measurement before the computer class. We give people pre-tests to see what their level is, and then after a computer class or after a one-on-one session, we'll give them a post-test. So that it's not just you came, you were here, it is you actually, this process, this thing that we did for you, gave you these skills. And that is one of the best evaluation tools that we have, is to really see not just that we did something, but to measure and qualitatively see what the impact of what we did had on that person's life, which is really why we're here.
And I think that, those of us from Chicago Public can agree with that, because we're busier than we've ever been, and yet we still face some big challenges in the past year and a half. And, we can say a lot of numbers, but I think it's the warm and fuzzies that make people realize what we do. And another good lesson from Smart Communities in Humboldt Park, the Smart Communities Initiative has a advertising element, and they originally had just like actors in the pictures, like typing on the laptops, or like learning, and it was staged. And the steering committee actually had to go back and find our students in the communities and have actual quotes from actual people who actually took the classes and had their picture on the side of the bus or the bus stop. And they became like local celebrities for learning technology. And the alderman actually called the library and said, was asking me about a particular patron. And I was like, well, just come by the class and you can meet her. She's fantastic and she'll tell you all about how great the classes are. That's the kind of stuff that you can't, that's not numbers based. That's, the warm fuzzy stuff, and you can't get enough of that.
Great.
For me, the criteria is the light. If I can work with a patron and the light goes on, and every time you see it, you know it, all of a sudden, they break, that is the benchmark that I use. And it could be regarding anything. It could be going to a website at their home where they're like 5,000 to 6,000 miles away. It could be finding a piece of information you've been looking for. But you know it when you see it. If the light goes on, I've done my job.
I know we have to end this session, but I just want to vibe off of the new word I learned today, SOPAC, social OPAC, to try to answer this question, because the problem with the outcomes is they walk out the door. The outcomes might happen 5 years later, or it might happen in that 2-minute interaction. Is it possible that we could think of what's happening in so many different endeavors of like crowdsourcing library evaluation? Because if it's really more important to have the real people on the bus billboard than the actors, then we could likewise ask people to share their outcomes with us in some kind of crowdsourcing method, which I'm not encouraging that we use the cloud, because who knows who owns the cloud. But we need a library cloud to put these outcomes on, and because they'll start to mount up, and we need to use the data analytical power that there exists in the library information science schools to crunch that data, to silence the critics who say, okay, outcomes out of libraries, it's all warm and fuzzy, and why are we funding this? But we really have to think way more creatively, and we have to be super aggressive, because outcomes, you just have to add them up and suddenly they're powerful statistics. So.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Right?